right, Justin, we are live here on the Fight Game Media Recap Show. We just got done watching Jake Paul versus Ben Askren, part of the Triller Fight Club, their second show, and I'm still not exactly sure what I watched. I know whatever I watched, it was a lot. I don't know what it was a lot of, but there was a lot of stuff going on. If you had somebody ask you, Justin, explain to me what Triller Fight Club is, how would you explain it to them?
I guess I'm going to have to say pride fighting mixed with MTV Music Video Awards. Or you could say hustle too, if you wanted to switch pride out. But there's a big spectacle. There's a spectacle fight aspect to what's going on, but there was also a lot of music, a lot of non-boxing talk and
Yes.
performance tonight. It felt more like a pop culture thing than just a boxing fight or boxing card.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. MTV Music Awards, great analogy there, because what we saw was a music show with some really popular artists. I think some of them were even in our age demographic. Some obviously were a little bit younger. But also we saw celebrities. We saw like a mixing of announcing teams, announcers, Sean Wheelock, Al Bernstein,
Pete Davidson,
Mario Lopez,
Oscar De La Hoya.
And so yeah, you're right. It was just like it wasn't a true sporting event. I think it was maybe even, shall I say, closer to sports entertainment than it was to a boxing event. But let's actually talk about this main event. So the main event was Jake Paul, Ben Askren, been built up. When you saw the weigh-ins on I guess it would have been Friday, Ben didn't look great. He looked chubby.
Chunky Ben Askren.
Well, I mean, he's not physically well, right? He had to have hip surgery or a hip replacement, so he's not going to be the same athlete that he was prior. But even physically, didn't look like he was able to train, and so then the fight happens, and Jake Paul looks good. He's a young kid. He looked like he was in shape. He looked like he trained for the fight. Looked like he took it seriously. And then the fight starts, and Jake has a little bit of he's throwing the jab out there a little bit. He's trying to throw the right hand, and he throws a right hand that misses Ben, just very, very small margin of miss there. And I saw Ben go, oh, my God, he almost got me. And at the time where he could sort of figure out that is the punch that he's going to have to, look out for, Jake kind of floated the left hand out just to kind of tease him so that his eyes kind of go the other way, and then boom, right hand. And Ben just couldn't get away from it. It wasn't that he couldn't take the punch. He took the punch. He went down. He got up. But the fact of the matter was that he could not get out of the way of a punch that was, it was a hard punch. It was a fast punch, but it's not like Ben didn't see it coming. Like he saw it coming. He just couldn't physically move out of the way. So when you saw the punch, he goes down, standing 8, gets up, starts to kind of come forward. Referee calls it off. Did you think it was an early stoppage, or did you think that Ben probably had enough already?
He looked like a different person for a couple seconds after, when he was on his feet. I think it was a good call, and it was like you said. I mean, I had to kind of double check. Was that how clean was that of a punch?
Right.
It was clean, and I think the issue wasn't as much like Jake Paul as much as it was Ben Askren not putting his hands up.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody's throwing a punch at your face, I'm not a boxer. I'm a casual boxing fan at best. It was like, if you got to have some type of guard near your face and your head. I mean, it seemed like, it was what happened in the first minute, right? First minute and a half or so.
Yeah, I think the fight ended at like 2 minutes and 1 second or something.
And this is his, first kind of thing he's done like this. I'm sure mentally he was kind of in like MMA wrestling mode in his mind. And of course, if you're in a fight that goes 6 rounds, uh, if you don't feel like you're in the groove in the first round, you might have a couple rounds, get your footing and feel comfortable. That just kind of goes for, and not just boxing, but all sports.
Yes.
This is the first time he's been there, and he didn't really seem like he came prepared, like he had trained, like he cared. Like I said, his hands weren't even near his face. I mean, that's why he got decked. And on the other hand, I don't know about this Jake Paul guy, but with the Nate Robinson fight he had, and tonight, I mean, he looks like a serious amateur boxer. He looks like, if I didn't know anything about him, I would go, yeah, he's a boxer. He takes it seriously. It looked serious. He knocked him out. It looked like I was watching somebody's boxing practice,
right?
Like training session or sparring session.
And so I have to. We have a friend on the Fight Game podcast Facebook group, Logan, who he was like, I feel so bad for those people who bought the show, 2-minute fight. And to me, if you bought that show and you paid your $50 for it, that is absolutely what you wanted to see.
Right.
Was some sort of knockout, legitimate knockout, right? Like, because we could even talk about the Prograis fight against Redkach. How do you pronounce his last name? Redkach?
Something like the announcers didn't really say their names much either.
They were too
and if
busy.
they did, they were often wrong. But
Yeah,
we'll get to that. Yeah,
they were too busy. But that was as close to a work as you could possibly see. Right. Somebody. And look, Prograis is going to beat him anyways, right? Prograis favored to win that fight. That guy just. He just wanted to get out of there so that he didn't have to take any more damage.
It wasn't like, I think the main event and that fight, that was a different situation.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Ben, just the guy can't box. I don't know why. I mean, I know why he did it. It's a lot
of
money.
Okay, so I think this is very relevant to the conversation. Our website is called Fight Game, right? So the idea of the Fight Game is that it's not just sporting competition. There's politics involved. There's, box office. There's making money. And this is the idea that Ben Askren, who was a legitimate UFC fighter, he can actually make more money if this pay-per-view show does a great number of buys. My guess, I don't know this 100% sure. My guess is that Ben Askren may make more money for this show than he would have for any single UFC fight, because he basically made $500,000 to show, and then whatever the buy rate is. And I don't know what the buy rate's going to be. My Twitter isn't necessarily the best barometer, but there was a UFC show going on, legitimate fight, Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. I would say the comments were 10-1 Triller Fight Club over legitimate UFC broadcast on ESPN. So, this is what I'm talking about when I say this is the Fight Game. You can go to this Triller thing and make more money than you could with UFC, which is a billion-dollar company, and producing a broadcast on ESPN. Like, it's crazy, right? Like, this whole idea that Ben Askren hurt in a sport that he's not good at can go and do this and make his money. Now, he probably can't do it again. This is probably his last opportunity to do so. But he goes out with a bang, fat and happy, and collects his paycheck. And good for him. Like, you want people to be able to make a living in their sport.
Yeah, but what about Teofimo Lopez? I think he's getting paid significantly less than Mr. Askren. What's up with that?
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second here, because that is the next show, and I will ask you what your future with the Triller Fight Club is. But actually, so let's actually go to some of these other fights. So we had Frank Mir. This is the other fight that I was actually curious about, because
me too.
Steve Cunningham, legitimate cruiserweight champion. A lot of people don't know him because the cruiserweight division isn't a money-making glory division in boxing. You looked at him, though. This dude is, what did they say? He was 44?
Something like that. He looked great. It was like
Yeah,
Bobby Lashley out there.
he looked amazing, like body wise. He looked absolutely amazing. And so then he fights Frank Mir, and we know Frank Mir like, we know Frank Mir like anybody. Like I feel like I've been watching Frank Mir fight for the last 15 years. So it was such a interesting thing to see somebody who you've watched in the UFC who has been such a terrific heel, I guess you would say, because he was the opposite of on the opposite side of Brock Lesnar. But just we can remember when Frank Mir was the young and up and coming UFC heavyweight, and now he's an old man trying to make some money. Not too different from Ben Askren, but he's facing somebody who is a legitimate boxer now. The original fight, I was so much more interested in the original fight, which is it was going to be Antonio Tarver. People who don't know Antonio Tarver, the boxer, and he was an exceptional boxer, beat Roy Jones, knocked out Roy Jones, but he was also in the Rocky Balboa movie as Mason the Line Dixon. So that, so he was supposed to do it, couldn't do
Nice
it.
tidbit there.
Yeah.
Nice Easter egg.
But yeah, so what did you think of Frank Mir's foray into the sweet science of boxing?
I thought that like the fight wasn't a great fight or anything. It wasn't an embarrassment for either of for Frank Mir, but it was a fight. It kind of went as I expected, probably a little better. He got punched a lot, and but the story of this match, unfortunately, is not Frank Mir. I think I mean, I thought it was going to overshadow everything before the main event, but Oscar De La Hoya was going off during this match. And for me, I was so distracted by that the fight wasn't as engaging as the banter that was happening in the moment throughout the whole match, the whole bout.
Okay, so before we get to Mr. De La Hoya, because I definitely want to talk about Oscar. I was so embarrassed for Oscar, by the way, because it's like this guy is one of the biggest boxing stars of the last 50 years, and to see him go on this show and it's almost like he had a middle-age crisis or something, right? Like he's like was he okay? So
putting it lightly, maybe.
Was he high? From weed? Was he drunk? Or was there even a little bit more extracurricular with him, do you think?
I think a little from column A, a little from column B. I also, when I was listening to this, there was a quote relatively recently from Dana White. What did he say about Oscar De La Hoya's something about cocaine?
Yes. I mean,
yes,
and look,
something, yeah.
Dana's
whatever.
had those same rumors about himself, right?
Sure. I'm just saying that's the first thing that popped into my mind. And then when they would cut to him, his eyes had a glaze over them.
Yeah.
And just some of the stuff. Do you remember some of the lines? I mean, I had to write some of them down. I think one of my favorites was, oh God, the whole USS and USSR thing.
Yes.
Can you explain that? Because I didn't really catch the whole thing. So what was that about?
Yeah. So Steve Cunningham. His nickname is USS.
Mm-hmm. Was he in the Navy?
Navy service.
Okay.
So Oscar is, I don't know if he's trying to be funny or if he was that wasted. He got the USS part, but then he added an R at the end of it. And when did the USSR cease to exist?
91. Around there.
Yeah. I mean, Oscar was in the Olympics in 1992, right? So, like he should know.
He'd probably say Czechoslovakia too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yugoslavia.
But
that wasn't even that was like a little bit. That's kind of early on. He was just it built. It really built.
Yeah. He was talking about Frank Mir and his. I think it started at 70 pounds heavier, then it went to 100 pounds heavier. Oscar was on one, and I was worried about him because I didn't want him to say anything that would get him canceled. By the way, Carlos Toro, who writes for Fight Game Media, and
Carlos, what's up?
he's on the Fight Game Media Network. He does the boxing podcast with Robert Silva, Pound for Pound. Don't worry, Carlos. I was gonna correct Justin, and I was actually gonna use Carlos's work. Carlos wrote a piece on how much Lopez is actually getting for this fight, and it is a lot more than Ben Askren because
that's good.
Triller actually won the bid, and they won the bid for this fight by a lot, which is why they got it. So we'll get to that in a second. But Carlos wanted to make sure that we knew that. I was gonna mention it, and I'm actually gonna use Carlos's piece that he wrote for us to explain that. But okay, so Oscar. Good night maybe for him, but bad night. I as an Oscar fan, I was petrified for the guy.
I think somebody needs to say good night and put him to sleep for the rest of tonight.
Well, they didn't bring him back, right? So that
probably went to bed.
That was his only time. So okay, so Frank Mir just got peppered in the face. I think Cunningham in that last round in sixth round, he kind of showed like, okay, guys, this is what I could do if I wanted to do this. I sort of figured that Mir was going to last when I saw how small the ring was, because if Cunningham was allowed a larger ring, I think he would have tired Mir out pretty badly, and then he would have probably knocked him out. But it was a small ring. He carried Frank, but you saw the damage on Frank's face. Frank took a lot of shots, and even though they were trying to sell that Frank was hitting Cunningham, maybe
De La Hoya called this high level boxing at one point. I mean, it wasn't the worst, it wasn't a horrible fight, but and I was not happy to see Frank Mir in the shape that he was. He didn't look bad, but he's not a boxer.
No, Frank Mir has always been someone who short arms his punches. And in MMA, you kind of have to short arm your punches if you are facing a wrestler or if you're facing somebody who you are worried about leg kicking. Like, you can't sit there and just throw wild punches in MMA just because of how many different ways they can counter you. So he's always been a short-armed puncher to me, and he started to get a lot of power as he got older. And I think he just figured, all he got to do is hit him one time. And no, come on, Cunningham's a real guy. So, all right, let's move away from the actual boxing, and I want to ask you about some of the other things that were happening.
Sure.
The concert, all the different acts. Now, I'm gonna guess the acts that you knew.
Okay.
You knew Justin Bieber. Everybody knows Justin Bieber.
I have to. I mean, that's what
What'd you think of the Biebs?
I turned the sound off when he was on.
Poor Biebs.
I mean, I didn't know how old he was. It's not my thing, but I was surprised that, like, he's a big star, and that is something that you don't see on shows like this and wrestling, but not boxing, not MMA as much. Like, he's a top 40 pop culture person.
Yeah.
As is Snoop Dogg.
Famous guy. Okay. You know the Black Keys. They're probably a band that you like and listen to.
I'm not a fan, but I have a couple friends that are really, really into them. But I am familiar with them.
What about Doja Cat?
Who was that?
There was the young woman, very attractive young woman.
There were a lot of those.
The other one was Saweetie.
Tonight.
She was the other.
Yes,
the other young
Saweetie. I did not know her, but I know her now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
I liked her.
I couldn't tell you a song from either artist, but I've heard of them. And again, this fits if you're drawing a Jake Paul audience. Jake Paul and Logan Paul both kind of became famous via their YouTube channels. And look, we're doing, this is also on YouTube, so we understand the power of this medium. And that's those are the fans that are probably tuning in are probably very familiar with both of those acts, Diplo and Major Lazer, and then this one might have been for me, but Mount Westmore, Too Short, Ice Cube, E40, Snoop Dogg, they were all up there as well.
that was maybe my favorite part of the show, and it was the same as the Mike Tyson show, like the Snoop Dogg. What was it? He just at the Tyson show, he did like a medley of his older tunes,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
was good. It
yeah. Okay, so
was really good.
what do you think about the mixing of music and boxing? Because if you buy, let's say Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury face each other, most boxing pay-per-views, they will give you a fight. You'll get 30 minutes of talking and video packages. You'll get another fight. Then you'll get another 30 minutes of talking and video packages. And, all the way up until the main event. That's how boxing pay-per-views work. UFC pay-per-views move a little bit more quickly because there's more fights, and most of the UFC fights are actually pretty important to the overall system of winning and losing and such. Boxing, not as much. Sometimes they're, really young fighters. You're mixing, you're matching to get impressive wins. But in this show, you had only 4 fights, and you had lots of talk. There was a ton of Snoop Dogg talking to both Askren and Paul. I'm sure recorded, a few days ago. You had Pete Davidson running around talking nonsense. Like, I like Davidson. The King of Staten Island is actually a pretty half-decent movie, and he's really good in it. He was not good on this thing. Whatever he was doing, his shtick, his little, Pete Davidson shtick, I was just like, oh, I kind of feel bad for this guy because he actually is a funny guy.
I think that for all the celebrities that were there were a lot. Between like MMA stars, athletes, music people, TV people. Um, I think that the difference that this and say UFC or other boxing cards, the main difference is the people that are going to watch and love the pure programming, where between the boxing matches, we're going to break down the boxing matches. It's going to be more, it's sports centric. This using music and other kinds of things like the slap fighting thing that was on the
Nature
show.
Boy Ric Flair.
That's right. That's right. But it's purely for people that don't want that. They're not interested in the sport. It's sports entertainment, like you said. It's sports and entertainment. And I think it's not trying to appeal to boxing fans. It's trying to use boxing as a vessel to create this sort of pop culture event, like maybe a monthly or biannual sort of thing. I don't know. And I think it would be a lot different if we were in a pandemic situation, if this was if maybe down the road, if this is as successful as it continues to be financially, and people can come to the shows, I see this as a thing that lots of friends or people on dates would want to go to, and they don't really want to. They're not boxing fans. They just want to go to the hot thing that's happening that night. That's what that felt like. And I think talking about like the people watching Triller tonight versus say UFC, I think that'll be a good example of, okay, generally the serious fans are over here and the people that generally prefer spectacle are over here. And it seems like for the majority of it, people enjoy that spectacle. They enjoy the fireworks, the music, everyone was kind of relaxed. It felt like it was a watch along at points too. Yeah. And as I was going to say about the announce team is that they weren't really in a performing setting. They weren't performing. We were watching celebrities having fun. Like Pete Davidson was off his rocker too. But I mean, I didn't not in a I'm not judging. It's just like he was partying. Everybody's partying. Did you remember what he said when the bell rang at the main event?
No.
Well, I'm not going to bother saying it here, but it's a little raunchy. He said raunchy things in the main event. It's not it's not a dignified title fight.
Sure.
But that's not what the people that are watching Triller, they're not even interested in.
So I'm assuming this is an interesting point you made, which is this didn't have real announcing, though there were real announcers. You did have Al Bernstein, who is a Hall of Fame boxing announcer. When I'm growing up watching ESPN fights, Al Bernstein is calling those fights. So he's been doing this at a high level for a long time. You had Sean Wheelock, who was there. Didn't do a whole lot, but he was there. Probably underutilized, but again, doesn't really fit into what you were saying.
He was
And
like the extent of the sport aspect
right.
of the production.
And then it had exactly what you were saying. Celebrities reacting to what was happening. And I think there is there's something to that because ESPN, now that they have ESPN Plus, they can do a bunch of different types of broadcasts, right? They'll do the super sports analytic broadcast where you're looking at stats, you're looking at numbers, and you're able to put that stuff up really quickly. So that analytical fan who watches, that is for them. And then you have what we're going to start seeing are the betting broadcasts. All the lines, the live movement of those lines, you're going to be able to watch that stuff as it happens with a betting-centric broadcast. They have done stuff where you bring in celebrities. Charles Barkley does, a quarter of a game on ESPN Plus, and that stuff is really funny. It is for the casual fan who likes Charles Barkley, maybe not super entertained by the actual game that's going on in front of them. They don't have any real ties. But that is a very interesting point because if you were there because it felt like a moment, it felt like a pop culture moment to be there and watching and paying your $50 or whatever, you probably enjoyed watching De La Hoya yuck it up and watching Snoop, basically as Jake Paul is putting Askren to the floor, Snoop saying, give me my money. Like, I guess he had a bet with Dana White. Is that what it was? They
That
made
was
$1 million
another
bet?
yeah, that was another storyline, I guess, for of the night, especially of the main event. And talking about betting, who better than Snoop Dogg to pretty much, I mean, he went off. I mean, that was the call. That's his legendary call will be that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny because put it in the context that it's in, and it's just it's surreal, but that's just the nature of what's going on right now and how things are. But I think the big difference here is you brought up ESPN earlier, and I was thinking the big difference here is that this event could never be on ESPN. So
Yes.
Triller is the what's the word? It's the thing that's it's destabilizing everything else. I don't even know what Triller is exactly.
I don't know. I don't know what Triller is either.
It's like TikTok.
No, it's just the name of the company. I don't. I mean, I don't know exactly. What Triller. We should have probably done our research.
But I think that's also part of. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows. I don't think anybody cares either because nobody has defined what Triller is. This show and the Mike Tyson show, they were anything they wanted to be because there wasn't any standard to look at from behind. It was a huge production, but it didn't look really like box. It looked kind of like boxing, but it kind of looked like an award show, and it kind of looked like something like a hip Grammys type deal. I don't know. It just wasn't
like
what we'd expect.
Do you remember? I don't know if you remember this, but so BET, Black Entertainment Television, they would have their normal day-to-day schedule, and then it would go into the night, and they would play BET Uncut.
Oh yeah,
and they were the slightly more risque music videos that would happen, right? Triller is like the BET Uncut version of whatever a boxing event is supposed to be. After dark, right? The sports entertainment after dark or something. Which, look, if they're like they are capitalizing now on it. You also made another good point. Without the pandemic, does this happen the way that it did? People are home looking for entertainment, and sports came back, right? Sports did come back, but when you hit with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones as your first show, that's actually it's really smart. No matter how many people want to talk negatively about what Triller is doing, all they're doing is taking advantage of the manipulations of what the fans don't actually get. ESPN pays so much money for the UFC, and when there's a big fight, when Conor McGregor fights, people come running. It's going to do way more than what this show did probably. But your day-to-day, UFC show. This was, like I said, this was a pretty big fight. Like Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum is a pay-per-view fight, and they put it on free TV. And like I said, my Twitter, which is not the barometer, but it was like 10-1 as far as what people were watching. So, there is a market for this stuff, and I think what I think this is with every market, right? Is you cannot overdo it, because the second you overdo it, then it goes away. So they have to be very smart. I personally, they're coming back in 2 months, and then they're coming back again after that a month later. I almost think that that's too close. Like I don't know if I would do these, every 2 months. I feel like these would be better, like the old Vince McMahon 5 pay-per-views a year model.
And I mean, thinking about the production tonight, the fireworks seemed like they were equal to or even bigger than the WrestleMania production fireworks from last week. I mean, this felt like it wanted to be such a big deal, but no company has the stamina to do that for a full year, to have WrestleMania every day for a year.
Yes.
And of course, it also depends on what they offer as a main event. And is it going to be more of a fight thing, or on the other hand, if they do it more regularly, are we going to see less boxing or less fight intensive cards? Is it going to be like a pay-per-view with mostly performance artists, or like, I don't know, comedy? Pete Davidson was there to do stand-up. I don't know. There's so many different avenues they can go down, because Triller is what? I don't know what Triller is. They could do whatever the hell they want. That's another plus for them.
So you and JD, on your last podcast on the Patreon, Fight Game Media Network, High Tension, you guys talked about production. You guys talked about KSW, and KSW really capitalizes on these like weird celebrity fights of like famous people against like real athletes and stuff. So you see that stuff work with KSW, and it sort of seems like that's what's happening here.
Presentation, I think, not talking about just the visual aspect, but how it's presented and how it's kind of scripted or written. The vibe and atmosphere is entirely different. I think they do that a lot. KSW, they do kind of like mixed up fights. They were supposed to do a fight between this Pujanowski, the old Polish fighter, and Bombardier, the Senegalese wrestler, a couple weeks ago. It was kind of like a mixed deal, a mixed bag, but they always feel like they're trying to make it come off as dignified and as a sport and as martial art. So at the end of the day, it's a very serious product. Like this is the be all end all sport, and the flash and the glitz and all that. I don't know why. I think they just have better taste. Is that it? I don't know. It's just different sensibilities, because it's Poland, and it's a country from that point on in Europe, and going east, the pro wrestling and the spectacle kind of thing. It's in those cultures. It's just that decadence. People aren't interested in that. It's neither positive or negative. It's just people aren't interested. Like I remember when we were on the podcast, it was you, me, and John Mox. We were talking about Khabib. We were talking about how big Khabib is in Russia. Just in Russia alone, on that fight, his last fight, had 28 million viewers. And I'm thinking, those 28 million viewers, would they watch pro wrestling? They're not watching. They don't care. Would those people watch Triller? They probably wouldn't, because again, it's a different flavor. It's trying to appeal to people who.
He's a hero as well, right? Like
he's a
national hero.
It comes down to the expectations and what a lot of people are going to want. And I think what a lot of people want now and want out of Triller is this is kind of high budget, frivolous entertainment. They want to go to a party, but they can't. This is like a party. Oh, and there's a fight. Oh, that's cool. Oh my God, he got knocked out. It's something to talk about, but that's just what it is. And it's okay to like it, because that's the nature of television. It's been like that for a long time.
All right, so let's get back to Carlos's mentioning, which is he left us a comment and said Teofimo Lopez is actually getting paid several $1 million for his next fight, which is more than he's ever gotten in any other prior bout, probably more than the Lomachenko fight. So I'm going back to a piece that Carlos wrote when Triller won the rights to the fight between Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos. So here's how it breaks down money wise. So Triller won the rights with the winning bid of $6.018 million.
Whoa,
Now
I didn't know that.
this is compared to Top Rank's bid, and Top Rank, Bob Arum, Teofimo Lopez is under the Top Rank umbrella. His own company, his own promoter, bid $2.315 million. Matchroom, Eddie Hearn's company, bid $3.506. So they more than doubled Top Rank's bid and almost doubled Matchroom's bid. Triller is, I don't know what they're expecting out of this, but they're basically paying Lopez. Actually, I think Top Rank gets 20% of what Lopez makes. So because Lopez is the champ, he's got the belt, he gets 65% of what that bid is. So he gets $3.91 million for this fight from Triller. Kambosos gets 2.1, with some of that money going to his promoter, Lou DiBella. I'm going to guess that Kambosos hasn't made $2 million in his entire career. So Triller, as this new game in town, they have to overpay. I don't know why they'd overpay so much. They guessed maybe a little wrongly on what this bid was going to be. So, they're still they're young in the sport, right? But this actually works out great for Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos, because these guys are making almost probably twice as much as they would have if under the current, with boxing promoter Top Rank and, PBC or PBC and Matchroom, bidding for these fights. Thanks to Triller, they're making so much more money on this fight. So that is the breakdown. So Carlos, thank you for popping in and mentioning that. Don't worry, I had your back. I was gonna make sure that I did mention that. I pulled up the article and everything.
I thought I read something like he was getting only 635K or something like that. So I'm happy. Maybe I just misread it, because 6 million is much more deserving. But hey, like you were saying, like Ben Askren couldn't get that kind of money that he got tonight in UFC. I don't think. I mean, not before the Jorge fight.
Well, he would have got the 500 to show, right, probably, or maybe that 500 could have been show plus win for him. I don't know what his deal was with UFC as far as when it came to gate and buy rates and all that stuff, but let's say that he doubles that. Maybe he even does better, but that's $1 million to fight for 2 minutes. That's not bad work for him. I think the worry here, though, is as long as the fans are okay with these kind of fights, because at some point the bloom could be off the rose to where they're like, are we going to see, are we going to see something like this again, where it's just an overmatched thing, and now we're kind of hip to the game. I think that's going to be an issue with them too. But okay, let's as we finish this up. So Lopez, Kambosos, and Evander Holyfield versus Kevin McBride is on June the 5th. Kevin McBride, I think most people would remember him for beating Mike Tyson. I want to say it was Mike Tyson's last actual fight before this exhibition with Roy Jones.
Carlos would know that.
Yeah, Carlos would know. For sure, Carlos would know off the top.
Carlos, if you're still here, hit us up.
Evander Holyfield, haven't seen him in a while. Evander Holyfield is, in his upper 50s, I believe. Looks amazing. He was on the show in the ring with Jake Paul. He's had health problems in the past, especially concerning his heart before in boxing. So I'm not too worried, because I think this fight will definitely be more like the Cunningham Mir fight. It'll be more like an exhibition. So I know people are a little worried because of the age. I get it. I think there might be like, a little bit of a handshake deal, like let's just put on a good exhibition. But I don't know if this is official, but they mentioned it when they brought Oscar in the booth for the Frank Mir fight. They said Oscar's fighting on the 3rd of July. Now, that is only 3 months out from now?
Yeah,
or less than 3 months, and Oscar hasn't fought since he lost to Manny Pacquiao in December of 2008. So
is he? I don't think he's training at the moment.
Well, he's got to be, I think.
He definitely didn't today.
Well, yeah, he
no,
took a day off of training.
I don't know what his deal is. I don't. If the money is there, people are gonna athletes and non-athletes are gonna go where the money is. I think that what we're learning more and more is Triller has a lot of dough. They have a lot of money, and the people in charge of the money, they don't want what Top Rank or PBC is offering. Maybe we'll see Terrence Crawford over in Triller on a Triller card, because he was complaining about just this, that he didn't feel like he was promoted enough. Bob Arum kind of told him off. Told him off.
He said told him off.
And he said
he wasn't.
He's not a draw.
Not a draw.
But and Crawford thought Bob Arum wasn't doing a good enough job to promote him. So I don't know. It could happen. I could easily see that happening. If that's the case, if they have the money and they have access to celebrities that people want to see, that could change things a lot. And it would make sure that things wouldn't get stale. But I don't know. I don't know the nature of what this Fight Club thing is supposed to be.
So my cousin, Bruce, he gave us the date, June 11th,
Thank you, Bruce.
2005, Kevin McBride, Mike Tyson. So
okay.
16 years almost to the day that he's going to fight Holyfield.
I feel like this
thing we're talking about.
It could. I have a feeling that fight could feel like the Roy Jones Mike Tyson fight. Like, it was fine for two guys at that age trying hard, but we're not gonna get a lights out fight. It's just gonna be I want Vander Holyfield to do well. So speaking about cruiserweights, he was the last famous cruiserweight that I can remember from my time. But yeah, people want to see what they know. They want to see what they're kind of comfortable with.
Can he only do that once, though?
We'll see. It depends. It depends on the performance.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know how many guys they can bring out. You're going to bring out Tyson. We saw Roy Jones. I don't think Roy Jones can come back to Triller and people will care. Tyson can. Tyson's 1 in a million, right? When it comes to charisma, when it comes to that stuff. Holyfield, we'll see with Holyfield. We'll see what De La Hoya. The rumor is Eddie Alvarez, or maybe this rumor is coming from Eddie Alvarez, but that's the rumor I heard was De La Hoya and Eddie Alvarez, and Eddie Alvarez has a fight with, he just lost by disqualification and won, and he's got another fight coming up really soon with one. So I don't know how that's going to work with him then taking a fight with Oscar. So we'll see about that.
I mean, maybe he's just trying to get his name out there. It seems like if you're not locked in with one group, you can bounce around, and because things are opening up and you have opportunities like Triller to. I expect Triller to eventually start hosting like MMA rules matches too.
I think you can have a mix of stuff.
Yeah,
right? You can have a mix of.
You already have music,
fights, right? I think it'd work. Like now, could you do a Brazilian jiu-jitsu grappling match? Probably not, because that audience is not going to be good enough. But could you do Chris Lieben bare knuckle fighting? I think you could.
Slap fighting?
Well, I don't know if I want to see Chris Lieben in a slap fight, unless Ric Flair is doing the announcing again. But yeah, like you could. I think. Well, again, though, if you have people who people are interested in, right, then you could do something like that. But I think it has to be folks that people know. So Chris Lieben would be a little bit of a draw on a show like this as an undercard, not as a headliner. But you could totally use someone like Chris Lieben. I would go up and down that entire The Ultimate Fighter season 1 and just find all kinds of guys off of that show.
Forrest Griffin.
Figure out let's get Stephan Bonner and let's get those guys and just have them do boxing match. I don't know. We'll see
get
what
Bob
it is.
Sapp. Bob Sapp, man. That's who I'm bringing in. Finally, I want to see Mike Tyson versus Bob Sapp. This was in the works for 20 years, right?
You got to educate that audience on Bob Sapp, though.
There was a minute where, do you remember that? Like in 2000, right before he retired from boxing, he would go to K1, and there was and K1 was trying to come over to Vegas.
Mhm.
Like Eric Bischoff was involved, and there was it never happened, and probably never was going to happen. But there was, there's a seed of something that Triller could exploit, and who doesn't love Bob Sapp, right?
Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap it up here. But before we go, I wanted to show off the T-shirt if people can see the T-shirt. So this is Fife Dog. The T-shirt, you can't see the whole thing, but it says Fife Forever. So I wanted to show off the T-shirt because most of the time when we're home during this pandemic, I'm like wearing like cut off sleeve shirts and stuff. So I had to put on a professional T-shirt for this show.
Very good.
All right, man. So thanks for jumping on, Justin. Thanks for doing this with me. And so we'll be back. So for Justin, I'm Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.